The night was quiet in Busan, with streetlights casting soft shadows along the empty sidewalks. Yuna Kim walked briskly, her university backpack slung over her shoulder, her mind still processing the complex biotechnology research from her late-night lab session. At 19, she was known among her professors as a brilliant and focused student, always thinking several steps ahead. The first sign that something was wrong came as a slight disturbance in the air. A subtle vibration, almost imperceptible, made the nearby street signs tremble for just a moment. Yuna paused, her hand instinctively gripping the strap of her backpack. She looked up, and that's when she saw it. A massive metallic object hovered silently above the street. It wasn't like any aircraft she had ever seen. No wings, no visible propulsion, just a smooth, dark surface that seemed to absorb the surrounding light. Before she could react, a beam of blue-white light enveloped her body. In an instant, Yuna felt herself being lifted. The street, the buildings, the familiar cityscape of Busan disappeared. Her mind raced, but she remained surprisingly calm. Years of martial arts training and her scientifically disciplined mind kept her from panicking. The interior of the spacecraft was unlike anything she could have imagined. Smooth metallic walls curved in impossible geometric patterns. Strange consoles with pulsing lights surrounded her. She noticed intricate designs that seemed to move and shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. Two alien creatures approached her. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with elongated heads and skin that seemed to change color slightly with each movement. Their eyes were large and completely black, with no visible pupils. They moved with an unsettling precision, almost like machines rather than living beings. One of them pressed a device against her arm. Yuna knew they were probably trying to sedate her or run some kind of biological scan. But her years of scientific training had prepared her for unexpected situations. She had studied multiple defense mechanisms, understood human physiological responses, and knew exactly how to control her body's reactions. Her heart rate remained steady. Her breathing was controlled. To the aliens, she must have seemed like an unusual specimen, a human who showed no fear, no typical stress response that they were accustomed to seeing in their previous captures. The aliens communicated in a series of clicks and low-frequency sounds that somehow translated into visual patterns on nearby screens. They seemed surprised by Yuna's composed demeanor. Most of their previous human subjects had shown immediate signs of terror or complete mental breakdown. Yuna observed everything: the technology around her, the movement of the aliens, the design of the containment area. She was collecting data. With every passing second, her mind was already working on potential escape strategies, analyzing the technological systems around her. What the aliens didn't know was that Yuna was not just another university student. She was the daughter of a military engineer and a computer science professor. Problem solving was in her blood. Adaptation was her strongest skill. And right now she was carefully planning her next move. The spacecraft continued its silent journey through the darkness of space. Yuna sat quietly, her eyes alert, her mind racing. The aliens believed they had captured just another human specimen. For their research, they had no idea that the young woman they had just abducted was about to become their biggest challenge. Little did the Vora Collective know that their routine research mission was about to turn into something they could never have anticipated. Yuna Kim was not going to be a passive subject. She was going to be their worst nightmare. As the spacecraft moved through the vast emptiness of space, Yuna allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. The real test was just beginning. The aliens had made a grave mistake. They just didn't know it yet. The containment chamber was cold and sterile. Smooth metallic walls reflected a pale blue light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Yuna sat on a simple platform, her eyes constantly scanning the environment. The aliens had placed her in what they believed was an inescapable space, designed to neutralize any potential resistance. They didn't understand humans very well. Yuna noticed small details immediately. The air circulation system made a tiny sound every 3.6 seconds. There was a microscopic seam in the wall near her left shoulder, almost invisible, but definitely a potential weakness. The floor had a slight gradient that most would miss, but To her trained eye, it suggested hidden mechanisms beneath the surface. The first alien researcher entered. It moved with a robotic precision, carrying a handheld device that looked like a cross between a medical scanner and a complex computer. Yuna watched carefully, her breathing steady, her muscles relaxed but ready. "Subject appears calm," the alien mumbled into its translation device. The words emerged in perfect Korean, though the pronunciation was slightly mechanical. Yuna knew they were studying her. Every movement, every breath, every micro-expression would be analyzed. She decided to give them exactly what she wanted them to see, but nothing more. She began a mental exercise her father had taught her. It was a technique used by military personnel to maintain composure under extreme stress. Her heart rate remained perfectly consistent. Her pupils dilated just enough to show interest but not fear. The alien moved closer. Its long fingers manipulated the scanning device, sending waves of light across her body. Yuna could feel the energy scanning her cellular structure, probing her biological makeup. Most humans would have been terrified. She was curious. Her mind was already working on multiple problems simultaneously. How did their scanning technology work? What were they looking for? What were the limitations of their containment technology? Each question was a potential weapon, a potential escape route. The researcher seemed confused. Its previous data suggested human subjects would show signs of extreme emotional distress, panic, anger, fear. But Yuna showed none of these. She sat perfectly still, her eyes showing a calm intelligence that was more unsettling than any emotional outburst. Unusual response patterns, the alien noted, adjusting its translation device. Subject demonstrates abnormal psychological stability. What they didn't know was that Yuna had spent years training her mind. Her mother, a psychology professor, had taught her mental control techniques from a young age. Her father, a military engineer, had trained her in tactical thinking. She was not a typical human specimen. The containment chamber had multiple surveillance points. Yuna could see at least 3 obvious camera positions and suspected there were several hidden ones. She began to develop a mental map of the space, calculating potential weaknesses. Hours passed. The aliens continued their observations. They brought various instruments, ran multiple tests, took numerous samples. Yuna remained calm, cooperative but always observing. She was gathering information with every interaction, every scan, every moment of contact. Her training kicked in. She understood that information was the most powerful weapon. Every detail, no matter how small, could be crucial. The way the aliens moved, the technology they used, the questions they asked, all of these were pieces of a complex puzzle she was solving. The containment chamber might have seemed like a prison to others. To Yuna, it was a laboratory, an opportunity to understand an entirely new form of intelligence. The aliens thought they were studying her. In reality, she was studying them far more effectively. As another research cycle began, Yuna allowed herself a slight, almost imperceptible smile. The real game was just beginning, and she was going to win. The alien researchers gathered around the observation window, watching Yuna with increasing confusion. She sat cross-legged on the containment platform, looking completely at ease. This was not how their previous human subjects had behaved. Yuna began her psychological strategy slowly and carefully. When the next researcher entered, she spoke first, a move that immediately disrupted their expected interaction pattern. "Your translation. Technology is impressive," she said casually, "but it has some interesting linguistic limitations." The alien researcher stopped mid-movement. Humans were not supposed to initiate conversation. They were supposed to be terrified, confused, or aggressive. Yuna was none of these things. She continued, "I noticed your language translation has difficulty capturing emotional nuances, particularly complex human emotional states." Her tone was conversational, almost friendly, but loaded with subtle psychological challenges. The researcher tried to maintain its professional demeanor, but Yuna could see the slight tremor in its hand-like appendages. She had disrupted their Standard Interaction Protocol. Over the next few hours, Yuna systematically began to challenge the aliens' fundamental understanding of intelligence. She asked probing questions that seemed simple but carried deep philosophical implications. Questions that required complex cognitive processing. If your species believes intelligence is purely about data collection, she would say, how do you account for creativity, emotional intelligence, the ability to make intuitive leaps? Each question was carefully constructed. She wasn't just talking, she was systematically breaking down their research methodology, challenging their core scientific assumptions. The aliens began to realize this was no ordinary human specimen. Their previous data, collected from hundreds of human abductions, became meaningless. Yuna didn't fit any of their established behavioral models. She understood something fundamental about intelligent communication. The one who asks questions controls the conversation, and she was asking questions they couldn't easily answer. Her knowledge came from multiple disciplines. Bits of neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, and communication theory merged into a powerful intellectual strategy. She wasn't just resisting, she was actively destabilizing their research framework. The researchers started making mistakes. Small errors in their documentation, hesitations in their standard procedures. They were becoming emotionally compromised by their inability to understand this human subject. Yuna observed their reactions carefully. Each micro-expression, each moment of confusion was a weapon. She was turning their own research methodology against them, using their systems of observation as a means of psychological warfare. When they tried standard psychological manipulation techniques, she was 3 steps ahead. She anticipated their approaches, redirected their questions, introduced complexity they hadn't expected. Your research suggests humans are predictable, she would say. But predictability is the enemy of true intelligence. Adaptability is what defines advanced cognitive systems. The aliens began to argue among themselves. Some wanted to continue standard research protocols. Others argued that Yuna represented an entirely new type of research subject, one that challenged everything they knew about human behavior. Her strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. She wasn't fighting them. She was making them fight themselves. By introducing complexity, by challenging their fundamental assumptions, she was creating internal conflict within their research team. Hours turned into days. The researchers became increasingly frustrated. Their standard methods were failing. Yuna remained calm, analytical, always one step ahead. What they didn't realize was that she was collecting data about them just as carefully as they were collecting data about her. Every interaction was an opportunity. Every conversation was a research experiment. The Vora Collective had abducted thousands of humans before, but they had never encountered anyone like Yuna Kim. She wasn't just a subject. She was turning their entire research mission into a complex psychological chess game. The containment chamber had advanced technology everywhere. Screens, sensors, communication networks. Most humans would see complex machinery. Yuna saw opportunity. Her fingers moved subtly. She watched the alien researchers, learning their technology with each passing hour. Their systems used complex quantum-based communication protocols. Most would find it impossibly complicated. Yuna found it fascinating. She noticed a small data port near her containment platform. It was barely visible, a tiny metallic point that most would ignore. But Yuna understood technology differently. Where others saw a simple connection point, she saw a potential gateway. During her next interaction with the researchers, she asked seemingly innocent questions about their communication systems. How do your quantum networks manage multiple data streams? Her questions were strategic, designed to extract information. The researchers, still believing they were in control, answered without realizing they were revealing critical technical details. Each response was a piece of a complex puzzle Yuna was solving. Her university training in biotechnology and computer systems gave her an unusual advantage. She understood how biological systems and technological networks could interact. The aliens thought their technology was advanced. Yuna saw it as just another system waiting to be understood. Slowly, she began to map their technological infrastructure, communication channels, power distribution networks, data transfer protocols. Each system had vulnerabilities. She was finding them systematically. The first breakthrough came when she identified a minor frequency variation in their quantum communication network. Most would miss such a small detail. Una recognized it as a potential entry point. Using a small device she had carefully constructed from materials in her containment chamber, she began to create subtle interference, nothing obvious. Just tiny disruptions that would be almost impossible to detect. Her strategy was patient. She wasn't trying to completely destroy their systems. She was creating small, strategic weaknesses. Like a surgeon making precise incisions, she was preparing to dismantle their technological defenses. The aliens continued their research, completely unaware that their own subject was systematically compromising their technological infrastructure. Una's fingers would occasionally move, seemingly random movements that were actually complex mathematical calculations. She discovered their primary communication network used a predictable encryption method. By understanding the pattern, she could potentially create backdoor access points. Each interaction with their technology was a learning opportunity. Her martial arts training helped. The discipline of understanding complex systems, of finding hidden vulnerabilities, these skills translated perfectly to technological subversion. She wasn't just breaking their systems. She was understanding them. Days passed. The researchers became more confident. They believed they were making progress in their research. They had no idea that Una was making far more significant progress. Small systems began to malfunction. Communication channels would briefly interrupt. Data transfer protocols would show minor inconsistencies. Nothing major enough to raise immediate alarm, but sufficient to create internal confusion. The quantum communication network started showing unexpected behavior. Researchers would find small, unexplained data anomalies. Transmission rates would fluctuate. Encryption protocols would momentarily destabilize. Una watched with calculated patience. She was playing a long game. Each small disruption was preparing for a larger strategy. She wasn't just resisting. She was systematically taking control. Her ultimate goal wasn't destruction. It was understanding. And more importantly, creating a path for potential escape. Every technological weakness she discovered was a potential route to freedom. The Vora Collective had chosen the wrong human to abduct. They thought they were conducting research. In reality, they were providing Una with the most advanced technological training possible. The moment arrived without warning. Una had spent weeks preparing, understanding, and strategically weakening the alien ship's systems. The researchers believed they were in complete control. They were wrong. During a routine scanning procedure, Una made her move. Her fingers, which had seemed idle for weeks, suddenly began moving with lightning speed across a hidden technological interface she had carefully constructed. The quantum communication networks she had studied began to respond to her unique input. The first sign of trouble came when the ship's primary navigation systems flickered. Monitors across the research vessel showed unexpected data streams. Alien researchers looked at each other in confusion. Something was happening, but they couldn't understand what. Una had discovered a fundamental weakness in their technological infrastructure. By understanding the quantum communication protocols, she had created a way to redirect the ship's entire system. It wasn't about destroying the technology, it was about controlling it. Alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed across the ship's corridors. The sophisticated alien technology, which had seemed invincible, now showed unexpected vulnerabilities. Una remained calm, her breathing steady, her mind completely focused. The lead researcher burst into her containment chamber. "What are you doing?" The translation device captured pure panic in its voice. Una simply looked up and smiled. "I'm going home," she said quietly. With a series of precise commands, she began redirecting the ship's navigation systems. The vessel, which had been on a preset course through deep space, suddenly changed direction. Star maps on the main display showed an impossible route, a path leading directly back to Earth. Alien protocol systems tried to resist. Firewalls activated, security protocols engaged. But Yuna had spent weeks finding every possible weakness. She wasn't fighting the system. She was becoming part of it. The ship's artificial intelligence began to respond to her unique input. Where the aliens saw complex technological barriers, Yuna saw language. A language of quantum bits, of communication, protocols, of interconnected systems. Panic spread through the research vessel. Researchers ran between control stations, trying to understand how a single human subject could compromise their most advanced technological systems. Their hierarchy began to collapse. Their carefully maintained research protocol fell apart. Yuna activated the final stage of her plan. She began broadcasting a message, not just to the ship but potentially beyond. A clear, precise communication that would challenge everything the Vora Collective understood about human capabilities. "You chose the wrong human to study," her message read. The ship's communication systems, which had been designed to study and analyze, now became her weapon. She redirected external communication channels, creating a signal that would be detectable across multiple star systems. Her message was simple but powerful. It wasn't a threat. It was a demonstration. Humans were not just another species to be studied. They were a potential technological force that could not be underestimated. The navigation systems continued to change. The ship was now on a direct course back to Earth. Not as a research vessel, but as a captured technology. Yuna had transformed from a research subject to a technological conqueror. Alien researchers watched in disbelief as their most advanced research vessel was systematically taken over by a single human. Their technological superiority, which they had believed was absolute, now seemed fragile. In the final moments, Yuna looked out into the vastness of space. She had done more than escape. She had sent a message that would change how alien civilizations viewed humanity forever. The ship continued its journey, heading home, under human control. The Vora Collective had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated human potential, and now they would pay the price.